Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, and welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism, and a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you all. I hope you and yours had a great time. But more of that, let's get in the squad. We're glad to be back. There's lots to talk about, lots going on, lots to happen, and we've missed you. I hope you've all missed us. So let's start right away. We've got there up in Clickmannshire our favourite lawyer, our Eva. Eva, how are you, my friend?
Happy New Year. Hi, Roddy. Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to all our viewers. I had a lovely time, managed a few days away, and a very brief border raid over to Berwick-on-Tweed, which temporarily remains English territory, but perhaps not permanently. I think I've stunned Roddy into silence. So now, Techie, come to our rescue, please. And I think we'll be joined by up there or over in the east by our good friend who's about to tell us the weather forecast for the next week, Lloyd.
Hi there, how are we all? Had a great Christmas, great New Year. I've now got a cat that's diabetic.
Oh no.
That's handy on top of everything else, but there we go. Interesting week we've had. Nice to see Roddy back though.
I should just say, folks, before we get any further, before I bring in everyone else, I'm operating in Dubai, and I've got a bit of a dodgy connection, so I might be in, out, and round about as we go on. And of course, we've got over there in Brussels, our Phil. Phil, how are you? Happy New Year and all that to you, chap.
Yeah, Happy New Year, everybody. It's cracking here. It's obviously another cracking day in Brussels. It was a wee bit snowy, but thankfully not a diabetic cat in sight. I mean, what'd you do with that? I know what you do with horses. Horses with a scalp, shoot it. Horses with a sore head, shoot it. I mean, what'd you do with a diabetic cat? I don't know. And I don't care, to be completely honest, which is not fair, really. Sorry for your cat. Sorry for you, Lloyd.
Well, if we get a new kitten here, we found stray over Christmas. We got that wee tiny kitten. And here, up in the city of Discovery, we have our Alan Petrie. Alan, my friend, how are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody. Oh, what a great year this is going to be. I mean, from the ringing of the bells, the unionists have been panicking with all their tweets. Have you seen them? Attack, attack, attack. Well, we're ready for you this time. Bring it on.
You better believe it. Now, we know, folks, every week we have a wee theme to our shows, and this one we've called Comedians, Chancers and Conmen. And that's exactly what our politicians have been doing. They've actually lined up. They must have thought, oh, we better really behave like buffoons because Prism's coming back and we needing some material. And they haven't let us down. I mean, starting with, I've got to do my favourite. Now, we know as politician was very unsuccessful. As a lawyer was unsuccessful. As someone that was serving fish and chips, wasn't he very successful? And here we go. What a duo this is. Up you go. Nicholas Sturgeon and Mary Black have to feature in the Glasgow Comedy Festival. I don't know if you've seen, folks. Wings Over Scotland, good old Stu Campbell. Happy New Year to you, Stu. Put out this comedy special. You're not allowed to upset people or make jokes about, you know what, or it's not acceptable. So they're even trying to kill the comedy. But Eva, tell me, what do you make of these two comedians trying to be comedians?
We always knew they were a pair of clowns, and they've only confirmed it. I had the privilege to actually visit Milltown Cemetery, where is buried, amongst many heroes, Frank Carson. You'll remember him. It's the way he told them. And I think that may be an epitaph for one day for both of these women. But, you know, they are not comics in the true sense of the word. They are betrayers of their country. And to think that they intend to use the public platform that they were given to make money for themselves and fame and fortune beyond the infamy that they already have is disgusting in the extreme. And that code of conduct from the Glasgow Comedy Festival is actually, quite frankly, outrageous. It refers to the need to not discriminate, but it gets the protected character characteristics of the Equality Act of 2010 completely and utterly wrong. It refers to gender and gender identity and completely ignores sex and sexism. So the writing's on the wall. Perhaps it will not be her funniest line, but it will be one of her most memorable if Miss Black utters the infamous "You can pee next to me," because that deserves to be her political epitaph. By goodness, how the mighty have fallen.
Oh, for sure. I bet you they don't have Ricky Gervais going when you see those rules. He wouldn't last very long on there, Lloyd. What did you make of these two having new careers? I wish they'd had them earlier. And you owe me £1 already. It's the first show of the new year.
Yeah, that's a good start, as always. I just admire their honesty. They're now admitting what we've all known to be true for a long time, which is that they are in show business, not politics. Most especially Mary Black. She's the classic example of you give one speech and you're an immediate rising star. And then, funnily enough, she didn't even actually write that speech. I wonder who she's getting in to write her jokes for her. I might sound as if I'm making light of this. I'm disgusted, frankly. And Eva kind of alluded to it. These two people were given a platform on the backs and the efforts and the energies of supporters of Scottish independence. They created the groundwork that allowed Mary Black to be elected, did the groundwork that allowed Nicola Sturgeon ultimately to become First Minister. And for them now to decide that they will milk the population on the basis of come and see me, I can tell you a joke or two, when in actual fact, the two of them, if this had been medieval times, they would probably been cast out and sent to a nunnery, never to be spoken about ever again. And the reality is, until we get politics that are serious again, where we're not discussing former members of our parliament who have now decided to become magicians, piano tuners, comedians, whatever, we're not going to be on the right track. And I hope this is the last time, until they're in a dock somewhere, that we actually mention either of these two people, because neither of them have contributed anything really to the body politic in Scotland. Mary Black most especially, but the destruction, damage that Nicola Sturgeon has wreaked on the independence movement is frankly unforgivable. And I don't think she could say anything that I would find remotely funny.
No, absolutely not. I've often said it, I've said it on here many a time, Alan, say that politics is show business for ugly people. I'm beginning to believe it might be true.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't be a surprise. You could just see it, the headlines and lights outside the building. Appearing today, no moral and lardy. That's what they should go under, because they're just a pair of clowns. But at least now, the promises will meet the punchline on a stage that it's fitting. Because everything that they ever promised us was just a joke to them, and it is ridiculous. But I do believe this was their second option of comedy, because they were actually going to be doing a magic trick first. But Mary Black tried to say a spell that was, by the powers of whimsy, cosmic fun, grant me a package till the setting sun, borrow a gift for laugh and glee, a manly surprise, that'll do me. But then she found out no even magic could put a penis on a lesbian.
You read poetry's getting a thing. We're going to have to be doing that every week, Alan. You're setting standards for yourself here. Phil, what did you make of it all?
Yeah, well, obviously, since neither were effective in politics, they have turned their hands to something else, and I don't blame them in one respect, because they both failed miserably in politics. So this is obviously, just for anybody that's not clear what it is, it's Nicola and Mary are to feature in this year's Glasgow Comedy Festival, okay? A lineup was revealed, about over 500 shows. It's in the middle of March. Beware the Ides of March. Well, we know all about that, Nicola. We've seen that before from you. So it's comics from all over the world are coming to this city. Who classifies these two as comics? I mean, guests will feature. I mean, you've got Sturgeon along with Val McDermott, right, for the Books and Banter show, when Mary's doing this wee Life in Westminster show. There are other people in there, you know. Alan Bissett's there, and he's a guy worth going seeing. But I wouldn't waste my money on the other two. Nicola, bear in mind, has failed at law, and she failed to deliver in politics, unless her metric was purely looking out for number one herself, in which case she has succeeded. And she thinks she's good enough and deserves to continue to be in the public eye. Feed the id. Look at me, the big I am. It's not funny. I'm with Lloyd on this because, in fact, it's criminally incompetent. She was supposed to lead us to independence and failed miserably. She is being blackmailed by the British state. So's her wee cabal, and rather than face the music and fight for the people, she chose to look after herself and sold out the people. As for Mary, well, you know, by her own admission, she hated politics and called Westminster a circus, which I agree with. But what did she expect? You know, she came as a student with very, very little experience in the real world, and a child. Let's be honest, she was a kid. She was just a kid, and for me, that is excusable. But as I've said, she comes from a good family and has talent and intelligence, but no comedian. I doubt it, and I certainly won't be wasting my time going to see either of them. In fact, they've both cost Scotland way too much already, as their failure and ours to get our independence is why 1 in 5 remain in poverty. Nah, they should be hiding under a rock, both of them.
We should actually, in my opinion, what we should be doing is treat them the way they used to treat the English comics that come up to Alhambra and turn up a crowd and throw rotten tomatoes at them when they go on the stage. That'd be the best way to treat them. But talking of, and I go back to you, ladies and gentlemen, this week's show is known as Comedians, Conmen, and Chancellors and Conmen. And here's one. The Secretary of State for Health down in England, Eva, here he is. He's brought in more this week, private health to help the NHS, and lo and behold, he's received £175,000 in donors from private health firms. Now, in any other walk of life, Eva, you're the lawyer, you can tell this would be known as corruption. You would be getting sacked, going to court, it's corrupt. But only in the British system can you get away with it. It's quite disgusting, isn't it?
I actually think he's raked in more than that from these donors, because that was April. He was obviously put in post in July, and I'm pretty sure I've read reports that there was more money. You know, this is about perception, and it's about how we talk about justice has to be seen to be done, that kind of thing. You have to look squeaky clean. And you really need, if you're in a government ministerial position, you have to be beyond reproach. Absolutely. This is quite the opposite. It's the antithesis of what we should be seeing in our politicians. We really deserve far, far better than this. And it's far too much of a coincidence to see, on the one hand, he's taken money to fund himself from private health companies, and on the other, there's creeping privatisation of the NHS. Of that, there is no doubt. And is it a case of he who pays the piper calls the tune? Because that's what it looks like. If that's not what it is, then West Streeting should return the donations and dissociate himself from these people. Otherwise, it looks as if he's very much under the influence of big business, pharmaceutical, and perhaps there is a conflict within himself as to who is the master he serves. Is it the people who fund him, or is it the electorate to whom he is answerable? There are questions for him to answer of a very serious nature.
It's quite disgusting, Lloyd. As I said to you, in any other walk of life, it would be you'd be fired. It's corruption by any other name.
Yeah, but I think what we've seen since the Labour Party took power is they're very firmly doing it's our turn now. The Tories have had all those years, they've lined their pockets, they've got big staff in their offices, and the Labour Party are just doing it. It's the same excuse that's used by politicians on a regular basis, which is, well, they did it, so I'm allowed to do it. Or their other great excuses, it's all within the rules, which oddly enough, it is. The money that's going to Streeting and went to, well, every single one that's in the cabinet, not to mention all the others, including my own MP, all of them receive money from various kind of bizarre organisations and strange individuals, but it's used to provide them with staff to make their job easier and allow their staff to run their offices better, and it's perfectly legal. within the British system. In the same way as we're now beginning to discover that because of all this guff about Elon Musk is going to fund the Reform Party, there's no way to stop him doing it. Strictly speaking, if he is smart enough to spread the money in the right directions and make the contributions primarily through Farage and the Reform members of the current Westminster Parliament, then he can give them as much money as he wants. Now, you know, I've said it for years now. We do live in the 51st state of the United States of America. It's just, we've not got our star on the flag yet, but that's the fact. And slowly but surely, the Americanization of not just our politics, but our public and our social services is happening. We don't see it quite to the same extreme here in Scotland, but you see it in England. And clearly, West Streeting and this Labour Party have a very firm agenda, which is to privatise the National Health Service. It's what all the political commentators of a centre-right perspective are all talking about. Even here in Scotland, they're talking about it as well. I heard Andy McKeever from the Tories talking about it the other day, and Callum MacDonald as well from Times Radio. There is an agenda here, and the agenda is to create a privatised National Health Service. And that's really what we're witnessing here. But if we focus on, wee Wes has got some money or so-and-so's got some money, we're not actually focusing on what we need to be focusing on. And what we need to be focusing on is the only way to protect the National Health Service in Scotland and fund it correctly is by us becoming an independent country and control our own economy. That's the facts. And that's what the First Minister, Deputy First Minister, Health Secretary, and a whole bloody lot of them should be saying all the time, instead of these rants and raves about populism and the fear of reform. Get on your hind legs and tell it like it is. Without control of our own economy, our National Health Service, so long as we remain part of the United Kingdom, will become privatised. Fact.
Yeah, that is. Here's the thing, Alan. As Lloyd says, they say it's all within the rules. It is within the rules. Yeah. Who sets the rules? They set their own rules. Whereas, I mean, they make illegal things legal. It's, you know, there's so many reasons for independence, but this is a big one.
You're right. I mean, it's corruption that's worst. I mean, these donors don't donate money. They make an investment that they expect an immediate return on. And that's exactly what's happening here. But it should be no surprise, because remember, under the Blair government, it was them that started the privatisation of the treatment within the NHS. It was them that brought in, I think it was called the community treatment centres, that were private sector, charging the NHS way over the amount it should be getting charged, but because it was easy access to that money and because the politicians were in their pocket. But I mean, every time you talk about the NHS, Labour in Scotland keep criticising the SNP. And yeah, the SNP have made a complete balls of things up in Scotland, but not nearly as bad as what they've done in Wales, not nearly as bad as what they've done in England. I mean, England, there is 5 million. Now, think about that. 5 million. The population of Scotland cannot get an NHS dentist in England. There's people in the hospitals that are overflowing in England, waiting 50 hours for emergency care. It's about time they got their finger at their own backsides without criticising Scotland, because we could do a lot better if the SNP wasn't in power and we had independence.
Well, in the meantime, Phil, we've seen it, we were talking about it, I can't remember if it was during the show or before the show, but this Labour in Scotland are talking about, oh, bad SNP, bad NHS, and all the while, as Alan's pointed out, Wales is far worse, England's far worse. Our NHS is not perfect, but it's far the best of the bunch in the British Isles. But this, a health minister taking a bung 175 grand, it's just quite disgusting.
Absolutely. I mean, this goes on from he's all roads lead to Westminster, you know, when he comes in with this, tears into his every single opportunity, as you were talking about earlier with Jim Donaldson, the DUP, and it's deflection. So, with an understanding that the majority was not earned but gifted to them by the Tories, they're already having to deflect because they know what they've inherited. They know they're riding this into the ground because that's where the UK is going. It's bust. And these elections that are coming up, they have to blame somebody else, and they've got an opportunity. That they've had their honeymoon period. The cracks have already started to show. The Tories know exactly what they're doing. And prior to the July elections, West Streeton said when the Welsh NHS was struggling that all roads lead to Westminster. That's when he said it, you know. And as Alan has pointed out, Wales is in a hell of a state. But what the problem we've got here, it's all devolved government. It's always their problem. And why is that? Well, Wales is, of course, worse than Scotland because all of the devolved governments are being choked to enable privatisation. Hence, Streeting's backers. Who gets 175 donations from private health companies while health secretary? Is anybody? We're not paying attention. We're just not. We're so long overdue a revolution. The apathy of the British people. We're just getting ground into the dirt, you know. And of course, the same week this is revealed that Streeton announces that more of the NHS is going private. No coincidence. We know that. We know it's coming. It's time to make sure others see this. We should continue doing what we're doing. Speak up. Talk to your neighbour. It's the classic thing we did during the referendum in 2014. Speak to a no voter or somebody who's not engaged. Get them to see what's going on. Ask them, persuade them, befriend them to wake up, smell the coffee, get out of this union, or watch your healthcare dissolve, along with the living standards and quality of life, all of which are falling in Britain. Britain is bust. It's time to align with our allies in Northern Europe, Ireland and Scandinavia. These are our natural allies, politically, socially, ethically. This is where we need to be. Not with the warmongers and not with the corporations and not with the privatisation at the cost of the people.
Quite correct. And talking of comedians, chancellors and conmen as well all day long, now there's a real world, Eva, and there's just student politics. And this is student politics from the wee ginger nut. Up you get. Where'd it go? Up you get. There you go. The new Scottish government must not welcome Donald Trump, says wee Harvey. I've never heard so much nonsense like, do you realise the POTUS? We live in the Western world, whether we like it or not, the most powerful man in the Western world, the leader of the Western world, and we, according to wee ginger nut, have to tell him to piss off if he comes to Scotland instead of welcoming him in and treating him properly. The man just doesn't live in the real world, does he? I'm not talking about Donald Trump, I'm talking about Harvey.
I think this is really quite funny because this was advice that Patrick Harvey was doling out to John Swinny. And I can just imagine Swinny's reaction. It'll be on a par with the behaviour of Humza Yousaf when he hoofed the Greens out of the Butte House agreement. There's no chance that John Swinny will bat an eyelid, particularly because he doesn't need the Greens' support to get the Scottish budget through now that the Labour have explained that they're not going to be voting against it, they're going to be abstaining. But probably funnier still would be Donald Trump's reaction, because no doubt he'd be sitting there saying, and who the hell is this Patrick Harvey anyway? How would you begin to describe Patrick Harvey to Donald Trump? The wee fella that flees about on his bike, doesn't bother wearing a helmet. The guy who, along with his colleague Lorna Slater, annihilated several millions of pounds in a deposit return scheme, created havoc in respect of marine protected areas, brought LGBTQ plus gender ideology into schools, hospitals, prisons, you name it, was friendly with people who were involved in the paedophile information exchange, had his photo taken with Notorious from that brigade. Seriously, when you talk about clowns, Patrick Harvey's probably first equal, along with Nicola Sturgeon and Mary Black. And I hope that Donald Trump knots himself laughing at the audacity of the man. On a more serious note, if we were going to not invite or not receive Donald Trump well in Scotland, if that's the thin end of the wedge, where does it end? How many other world leaders are not welcome in Scotland? Because if that's the road that we're going to go down, let's do it properly. Let's start talking about Zelensky. Netanyahu. What other leaders are not welcome here? Because you cannot draw a line under one and one alone. You have to treat everybody equally if you want to have sensible, recognised status on a world stage. Singling one ruler out for whatever reason is unacceptable, and that on its own is undemocratic and particularly stupid.
It's particular. What I want to hear Scottish MSPs and MPs saying is the world leader we don't want to see up here is the Prime Minister from England or the King of England. That's the ones I want to be telling them, don't you come here on your bike, son. Lloyd, I mean, Harvey's just a clown.
Yes, he is, and I'm surprised that he hasn't joined Mary Black and Nicola Sturgeon. They could be the Three Stooges and get back into their comedy. No, it's again, you know, the worst thing about this is the fact that we as a polity, we as a nation are represented by that poison dwarf. And people outside of here, in the same way as we read and critique the stupid remarks made by politicians in other countries, well, other people get to see Patrick Harvey on our behalf. And what do they think of him? They think he's an idiot. There's no question about that. I mean, the one thing I need to say just now, though, we've never forgotten it, but Patrick's off Parliament at the moment. He's got a health issue of some kind, which means he won't be at his work. He's away getting fixed. I could make a list of the things that I think are wrong with him, but I'm not medically trained, so I'll just shut up about that. But the worst of this is that in some ways, the introduction of a parliamentary structure that we've got that creates a situation where smaller parties can be represented. And the Greens, because Green is a brand more than it is a political party, we're always going to maintain at least one or two members of the Parliament. And Patrick knows this. So every single utterance of Patrick's is to keep himself as leader of the Green Party. It's not even to get himself elected, because that frankly doesn't matter for another 18 months. Patrick has got a bit of an internal revolt going on in the tiny little organisation that is the Green Party. But what Patrick does is Patrick plays to his own gallery constantly, exactly the same way as the Unionists constantly go on about how they hate independence. Patrick goes on about niche little things that people in his insignificant little party get exercised about. The whole idea that he can look himself in the mirror in the morning and say, I am Patrick Harvey, I'm a regional member of a regional parliament, sub-parliament of a national parliament at Westminster, and I am on the same par as the leader of the United States of America. It's absurd. And it just shows you again the level of delusion that we have among some of our elected members. I mean, it is utterly and completely delusional as someone who was elected on less than 4,000 votes, for you to turn around and tell, on behalf of the nation, and tell everybody that you think the President of the United States should not come here. That's great, Patrick. Stay in the toilet when you say things like that. Don't do it in public. It's stupid.
I hear his problem actually is his medical problem is he's got his foot stuck in his mouth and they're surgically trying to remove it because it's been in there so many times. I don't know if that's true or just a rumour. We'll find out. Alan, we Patrick telling the we shouldn't deal with the POTUS. It's just embarrassing.
Whether we like it or not, he's the President of the United States. I mean, I don't like it, but he is the President of the United States, and he's got to be brought to Scotland at some stage to speak to our politicians. The problem I've got with Patrick's stance is this has not got anything to do with what Trump stands for, except for he's opposed to TQ plus ideology. I bet Patrick Harvey's not interested in Trump trying to take over Greenland, Canada, Panama. And that's what he should be brought to Scotland for, to give guarantees that he will leave these sovereign nations alone. And he rules out military action to take them because he's refused to do that. That's what our government should be doing. Not just ignoring them, because it's more dangerous ignoring that man. But the other thing we should be looking at is the double standards here as well. Because you've now got a president of the United States who is entitled to come to this country, who is a convicted criminal. Convicted criminals aren't supposed to come into our country.
No, they're not supposed to be in our government either, Alan, but they are. And accepting bungs left, right, and centre, not just West Streeting. We've got the Foreign Secretary accepting £70,000 bung from the Mossad, from the Israeli government, and promoting a genocide. So, as I say, they were comedians, chancers, and con men. That's what this week's show's about. Phil, I'm talking that over to you, Phil. No, I've got to say, Phil, I want to know why when you were in Parliament, you didn't get yourself lots of bungs and be like the rest of them. You were too honest. That's your problem. But
Yeah,
and Patrick Harvey. On your views on Patrick Harvey.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick Harvey. Where do you begin with this wee clown? He's an embarrassment. Patrick Harvey's always been an embarrassment, and it's been nailed before. What's been said about Patrick Harvey is absolutely on the money. This guy he's not fit. He's not fit to run anything. So why is he still there? I'll never understand. I mean, he's a moron. Woke is more important than politics and diplomacy. That's what he's saying. What an idiot. I have a few friends who are or were diplomats. In fact, I'd love someone like maybe Craig Murray or one of my other diplomatic friends to explain the difference between diplomacy and politics to somebody like Patrick Harvey, because they are quite different. And you, Patrick, you, sir, are neither. So dialogue, that's how you negotiate. That's how you run politics. That's how you run countries. That's how you negotiate your place in the world, be it good, evil, or indifferent. It doesn't matter. You have to communicate. What if everyone took this attitude that Patrick's got before or during the creation of the Good Friday Agreement? Patrick, you're a moron. The man's a virtue signalling waste of space. Get him out my face.
I agree. An chancer. They say comedians, chancers, and conmen. And talking of that, this next part either falls into all three: a comedian, unintentional, a chancer, absolutely, and a total con man. And that's this man saying this. Listen to what he says.
Frankly, that record is there. You can see it. You can make your own mind up. It is something about the nature of our politics. Because once we lose the anchor that truth matters, in the robust debate we must have, then we're on a very slippery slope. And when politicians, and I mean politicians, who sat in government for many years, are casual about honesty, decency, truth, and the rule of law, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right, then that affects politics, because a robust debate can only be based on the true facts. And that's why this is actually an important point about our politics, not about what anybody may or may not say on Twitter. That actually isn't the main issue. The main issue is, what are politicians here doing to stand up for the things that matter to our democracy and the way that we have robust debate? That's why I want to call this out, because I think it really matters. And it matters not just to me, not just to the Labour Party, but it ought to matter, and it used to matter, to all political parties. And it's a sign of where the Tory party have got to, that we're even having this debate.
I'm kind of gobsmacked. This is a man that told us that, he would save Grangemouth. A man that told us he would pay the waspy women. The man that told us that they would support the winter fuel payment. He lied about it all. He's a bigger liar than Boris Johnson, and he has the audacity to stand up and say, truth is to be our anchor. The rule of law, where he ignores the international law that says there's a genocide. He says, and everyone that disagrees is far right. It's all the cliches. He is a comedian, a chancer, and a con man.
This is a tragedy, actually, for the United Kingdom. And what is particularly galling is this was, in essence, a party political broadcast by the Prime Minister, where he was on stage surrounded by a number of NHS personnel in uniform. NHS personnel in uniform are not allowed to participate in party political broadcasts. But by allowing himself to be interviewed in the manner in which he was, He's surrounded himself by people who are generally respected by the public to give himself a veneer of respectability when every word that he's uttering is completely and absolutely hypocritical in the extreme. When he speaks about truth mattering, he's referring obviously to the furore in respect of the rape gangs and the reaction that there has been nationwide and obviously internationally about some aspects of old as well as recent news. But this whole issue has been hijacked by politicians who, in the main, and every party is responsible here and every party is liable here, in the main, they've jumped on or tried to jump off a bandwagon and have ignored the truth. Because the truth is, there have been a series of trials, there have been several investigations, some victims and some others want further inquiries, some people want the results and the recommendations of other inquiries to be implemented. It is not a unanimous cry from victims and their relatives to have a national inquiry, but there is a unanimous cry for something robust to be done. And it's dreadful to see that this week Keir Starmer and those around him were at times more interested in defending the reputation of Jess Phillips than they were to look at the bigger, wider, much more serious picture. Because when it comes down to telling the truth, Keir Starmer and many around him are strangers to that in the context of telling lies outright, not just about what they were going to do when they came into power, what a vote for Labour would mean, how it would mean an end to austerity, and as you said, Grangemouth would be saved, the waspy women would be looked after. They promised that there would be an investigation into rape gangs and related matters. They promised that there would be democracy. They promised they would listen to the voices of the devolved assemblies. And in the real world, each of these promises in turn has been broken. But one of the biggest lies that was told by Keir Starmer prior to his election, and what he's backed away from, was the issue of gender recognition and gender reform, because he had a difficulty about that in terms of sex and gender. And the Labour Party remains riven as the result of these difficulties. So there's a long road ahead for Keir Starmer, but what it is not is a road that's paved with stones of truth and justice, because he should know better, given his previous position as Director of Public Prosecutions, than to stand and spout forth information which is as far from the truth and from the promises that he ever made as it could possibly be. We don't need a Wayback Machine to see that. We're living proof day in and day out that Labour have broken every promise made thus far, and there's far many more still to come.
Absolutely. I've been around the politics for a long time, like yourself, Lloyd, and I've seen some cynical things and I've seen some things that shock me. But when I listened to that speech from that guy, so pious, so pompous, and him daring to talk about the anchor of truth, when that goes, everything else goes with it. He's the biggest liar in British politics.
There's no question about that, Roddy. But I think what's becoming more and more disturbing about Keir Starmer, I think it was last year I jokingly referred to him as, he strikes me as being a bit of a robot. Things just come out and he says them. Well, we've now got to the stage where he's made an art form out of the concept that if I say something, it is true, but if I say 5 minutes later the opposite, that's equally as true, because what was true before is not true, and what I'm saying now is true. That's the logic upon which this Labour Party government is built. This is the whole way they are governing at the moment, is they say something, knowing full well it's never going to happen. I mean, in some ways, maybe they picked up that one for Nicola Sturgeon, Any out there got your free laptop or your free bike? No? Oh, well. Make promises, have a big splash about it, put out a press release, and then just let it die and go away. Unfortunately, what Starmer and them are now discovering, that when you are actually the government of the country, these things don't go away. They actually come back to bite you. But in the mentality that this Labour cabinet particularly has, it's, I have said it, I have the important position, it is true. And if you criticise me, it's because you're a bad person. and you don't actually understand. I can't count the number of times I've heard senior Labour figures in the past couple of weeks at the end of a sentence say, but it's very complicated. Now, what they mean when they say that at the end of the sentence is it's, you're all too stupid to understand, but us here that have got the job, we know what it is, and it's far, far too complicated for us to explain it to you. So just you come along with us. That's how we're being governed. I mean, when Eva made reference to the fact that Keir Starmer was the head of the prosecution service in England, you think to yourself, how many miscarriages of justice was he party to? I mean, we know of his behaviour over Julian Assange and his arrangement of Assange's arrest and incarceration in Belmarsh. We know also some of the things that he said about protesters and some of the sneaky laws his group or his government have brought in. It really does make you think, what is Starmer's agenda? Does he have an agenda, or is he programmed? Or is he so psychopathic that he thinks everything's all right? But then again, if you've got people like Jess Phillips and Rachel from Accounts around you, then of course you're going to think that you're something special when you're surrounded by fools.
You learned that from Nicola Sturgeon as well. Alan, you've been around the political scene for a while, and I'm sure a lot of things have shocked you and stunned you. Did that speech have the same effect on you as it had on me?
Labour is what Labour does. I mean, that's all they ever do is lie, lie, lie. I mean, people say that they're a stranger to the truth. That's not right. They know exactly what the truth is, because you need to know what the truth is to avoid it. And they just avoid it as much as they possibly can. I remember when we all got into politics, there was a thing called principles, where you stood by your principles and you tried to convert others onto your beliefs. And if you did that, you got elected. Now it seems to be the other way around, where politicians are changing their principles to get elected. They're standing on things that they do not believe in just to get votes. And that is wrong. But even this politicisation of child abuse, that cannot be politicised. This is far too important to be politicised. This has nothing to do with right, left, race, or anything else. This is about child abuse and must be dealt with. My issues with the national investigation is, who can you trust? Because remember, there was a video going back to, I think it was the 70s, a Tory whip who said that they have a black book full of MPs who may have got into trouble with little boys because it gave us something to use against them if they were going to vote against the whip. That's what we're dealing with. One of the biggest child abuse rings was run out of Westminster, involving politicians, judges, police, celebrities. Who can you trust to have this investigation? Something's got to be done. I don't have the answers for it. But the protection of children must be paramount. Drop the stupid politics on this and address that problem.
Phil, you're an old cynic like myself. When you hear that man Starmer talking about the anchor of truth, and you know the lies he's told, did you not just sort of shake your head a wee bit?
Well, he says the anchor of truth matters to him. Well, let's say it like it is, Keir. There's a big W missing in your statement, and you are exactly that. As I've said before, and Alan just touched on it there, getting and keeping something on any politician keeps them in your pocket, or any person. Just look at relationships and human nature. Why destroy everything? Why not just keep them as your puppets and make them do your bidding? That's how it really works. And that's what's going on here. You're looking at listen to this guy. Proxy war with Russia. Not as he reports and supports. He's a liar. Genocide in Gaza. Reinstatement of old empires with the Turkish Ottoman Empire being reinstated in the Greater Israel Plan at the cost of humanity in the world, as it turns a blind eye to the horror in Gaza, Palestine, Syria and Lebanon. Next, watch out, Jordan, Iran, Egypt. It's not as he says it is. His brother-in-law is an IDF officer, I understand. He's a liar and a supporter of genocide. As Eva rightly mentioned, rape gangs, and Alan touched on investigation in England. Where is it? It's absolutely necessary. Protecting our children? What is more important than protecting your children? And he's been bought off. No, it has to be an authentic investigation as well, not one of these jobs that the SNP or he would put in. He's a liar. Energy bills highest in Europe. Thought they were going to go down and you'd protect the people against the energy cost rises. Mr. Starmer, liar. Green energy con, and yes, it is a con. It's the reason your bills are the highest in Europe, and the profits are at highest levels they've been for energy companies. He's lying again and protecting the corporations that are backing him, the Tories and all the politicians that are in power. 1 in 5 in poverty in Scotland. Labour, the party of the people, supposed to be looking after the people. Liar. Privatisation in the national health, it's happening again in front of our eyes. You're a liar, Mr. Starmer. And it all comes down to one thing. Remember it, we played it often enough. No austerity, read my lips. Aye, right. Labour. It's a continuation, different arse, different cheek of the same arse. Liars to a man, woman, or whatever you feel like being these days, come the question. It's a disgrace, absolute disgrace.
It is indeed, and while we're touched, let's get on that subject, because this week was another week talking of chancellors and conmen. Now, I condemn all the parties to this, and I think you allude to that as well, but there was a vote against in Parliament against having another inquiry, Eva. The MPs put the Tories for a new groomings inquiry, and the stress is on another grooming inquiry, because the Tories are using this to attack Labour and saying, oh, it's terrible you're doing this, and it is terrible and not. But the point was that the Tory party sat on 2 inquiries. They had the results, they had the inquiries, and did nothing about it. They're both as guilty as each other. Comedians, chancellors and conmen, the lot of them.
Well, they are indeed, because these events are not new. The trials that they refer to have happened over a long period of time, and information has been available to politicians for literally donkey's years. There are former politicians who were interviewed 10 and 15 years ago, whose interviews have been reprinted this week, including several that were in The Guardian, from Anne Cryer from a long time ago, that the Labour Party knew perfectly well what these trials had involved. There is no secret about this, but the Tories knew, and knew full well what the recommendations, particularly of Alexis Jay, were, and they've not been implemented. So this is nothing other than political point scoring, but using the absolutely most vulnerable within our society, women and girls who were children, wee lassies, 9 and 10 and 11 years old, who were gang raped. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly, some to the extent where they will be completely unable to ever have children. Their injuries physically and mentally are actually indescribable. But this is not news. The news is only that the politicians are, without exception, behaving very, very badly around these matters. What they ought to be doing is speaking to and listening to the victims, their families, and the experts, the social workers, the brave police officers, and the brave politicians of yesteryear who tried valiantly to make sure that recommendations of investigations were actually implemented. This is about safeguarding. It's about safeguarding, it's about looking after the most vulnerable, and it is an abject lesson to all of those who say that truth matters, because where truth matters is that predators exist everywhere, around every corner, in every community, in every race, and in every religion. And everybody needs to be protected from predators, regardless of their nature or where they come from.
Absolutely. I am, like everyone else, decent human being, Lloyd. I abhor everything that's happened, and I feel for these children. And I'm one the politicians are using it as a football to score points. And I say when the Tories are every bit as bad as Labour because they had inquiries and did nothing about it. You know, there's things coming out like, oh, these children were sexualised, so maybe we shouldn't be arresting people. Things like that kind of are nauseating. We've been talking for years on here about people getting at our children in schools and attacking them. It's not just Asian gangs. There is everyone in every section of society who have been attacking children. There's almost an epidemic of people abusing children. We really need to get to the bottom of it, and we can't just use it to attack Muslims or Pakistani men or just the politicians fighting. This really needs someone to grab it and take care of it, and let's get to the bottom of the absolute problem.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, Roddy. I think, or I get the sense that the networks that would be uncovered with a proper full national inquiry, judge-led or indeed UN-led. You know, it's not unusual for the UN to be brought in to carry out investigations like this, which you know, have tentacles that reach out into every kind of structure of our society, from politics to the law to health to teaching to local government, all of these things. But I think, you know, this is the English disease, that there is a knowledge that this has been going on, and this has been going on for many decades, if not hundreds of years. In some ways, it's kind of baked into the way education is done in England, particularly amongst the rich, where they send their children off to be corralled in schools with dangerous individuals. And we've discovered from the many inquiries that have been about the school system in England that, you know, beatings and assault and sexual assault are the day-to-day normalities of life in an English private school. And those very same people then go on to Oxford and Cambridge, and then they go on to the diplomatic service, the civil service, or they go into politics at Westminster, or they follow their fathers or their mothers into the House of Lords. If there is a true inquiry here, this is going to open up something which could be effectively the end of English civilization as we know it, and they know it. That's why you cannot go there. You cannot, you know, there's never been an inquiry into Jimmy Savile. There's never been an inquiry into any of, you know, there was a minor inquiry when Jeremy Thorpe got somebody to shoot a dog because he was going to be outed as a homosexual. But this stuff has been going on for years and years and years, and even, I mean, it goes back to and gets referenced in a book, Tom Brown's School Days, which was written in the mid-1800s. It's all about power and control. And remember that most sexual crimes are crimes caused by a need for power. It's about power. There's, you know, you're exercising power over the other individual. The other thing we've always got to keep reminding ourselves of, forget about religion, you know, forget about nationality, forget about ethnicity. The vast majority, 99% of all sexual crimes are carried out by males, by men. You know, that's the most important thing is, how do we address that issue? How is it that, you know, the religion of these men and Rotherham and Oldham and all that is not really relevant in this, in the same way as the good Christian Boy Scout masters who ran the many kind of paedophile rings within the Scouting movement, within the Boys Brigade, within the Roman Catholic Church, within the Anglican Church, within the Plymouth Brethren, for goodness sake. Primarily, these are men who form these structures to satisfy their own desires. And because of that, because men hold so many positions of power in the United Kingdom, if you have a true inquiry into this, everything would begin to fall apart. Not necessarily because you are a perpetrator, but because this has been going on for so long and there is an accepted attitude, and it's clear when you read the evidence that was given at the trials, the attitude of the policeman, come back when you're sober, hen. These kind of attitudes that the actual officers themselves had towards these women, that's a male problem. It's not an Islam problem. It's not a Hebrew problem. It's not a Catholic problem. It's not a Protestant problem. It's a man problem. End of. And until we properly address that, properly address it, then we're going nowhere. But then again, we're a society that revels in military exploits. We revel in the exercise of power. This is what's admired in so-called British society. So in some ways, what the men are doing is only a reflection of what society's telling them they should do. Exercise your power. That's what Britain's all about. That's how we got our empire, exercising our power. The danger of an inquiry here is it goes from the bottom to the top. Everyone knows that. It's been covered up for years and years and years and years and years. Lord Louis Mountbatten, mentor to the current king. Queen of the Navy, he was known when he was the commander of HMS Cossack. The tales of Mountbatten are legendary across Northern Ireland, across India, right across the world. And the fact of the matter is that Mountbatten at no point ever was brought to, well, there are some who'd say he was brought to justice in a somewhat unfortunate way, but others innocent lost their lives at the same time. But the fact is, this level of corruption, this level of abuse of women and girls is endemic in British culture. And until that's addressed, we're going nowhere.
No, you're absolutely right about, it's a man problem. We don't admit it. It was the same with the Yorkshire Ripper. He should have been caught a lot earlier, but yeah, it was prostitutes, so who cares? That was the part of the attitude that delayed the arrest of Sutcliffe. But on this, Alan, when it's anything to do with the government or the establishment, they back away from it. Like the post office and the blood group, Hillsborough, Bloody Sunday. They take forever. They don't want to have the inquiry, and it's limited inquiries. And the same after the Iraq War, the Chilcot report, where they limit what can be found. They don't actually open it up. And I think Lloyd's idea about the UN would be great. However, the pomposity and arrogance of the British ruling establishment would never dare allow jolly foreigners to come in and tell them or inquire into anything. It's just endemic in our society, where they cover up and lie and cheat. The British Union is corrupt to the core.
And the reason for that is because it's not politicians that run it. It's the civil service that run it. And the civil service are unsackable unless it is a major, major issue. And major issues do not happen within the civil service because they cover up for every single one of them. I mean, even if you go down the road of punishment for people who are getting caught with there's no such thing as a minor child abuse case. There's no such thing. If you've got photographs of a minor in an explicit situation, that's child abuse. But many of these people are getting community service. While someone who's on Twitter criticising a politician is getting jail sentence. I mean, come on. Where's your priorities? And until you get the priorities right, these people are going to continue. And it'll not just be the child porn on internet they'll be watching. They'll soon move up to the next stages. Start hitting them hard, because that's the only way you're going to get rid of them. And start bringing in rules to bring the power back to the politicians who are elected and out of the hands of civil service, and make the civil service accountable.
This is the thing here, Phil. We know they're not going to do. We now know he's not going to have another inquiry. They've not said they're going to act on the two previous inquiries. They're just going to try and sweep this under the carpet, and children throughout the UK will remain in danger, will remain getting abused and sexually abused and hurt and mentally scarred for life. What do we do?
Go independent and set a society that actually gives a damn, that's nimble enough to look after herself, cares and implements the values that we have, that fights the corporations, that stands up to these bullies around the world, and it doesn't rely on complete waste of space like every politician we've named so far. As a father, the rage when Eva was given some of that description of what was going on, I found it hard to contain myself, and I know what it's like as an ex-policeman as well. But this is disgusting. There was a case to answer. There have been cases to answer. There are constantly cases to answer, and it should be properly investigated. The race card, sex card, whatever card, no matter how correct it can be at times, is certainly being abused to protect predators here. Lloyd's right, it's male, but there is a cultural problem. In some cultures, the abuse of women is normal and children is normal. I lived and worked in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and in these cultures, the horror of rape is a daily evil on these societies, particularly the children and the women who live there. It's horrific, and why can't we talk about it? It's real. Look at McAnulty versus McCulloch. In Scotland, it set the precedent for false claims of racism. This should have happened down south to protect these young girls and women and boys. But yes, the problem is it will expose those higher up involved in this evil. Let's take them out of our society and protect children everywhere. That's what we want. How do we do it? We take control of our own politics. We take control of our own country, our smaller country, and we deal with these things ourselves. We have to have these very difficult conversations about very difficult subjects like this. The perpetrators need to be investigated, prosecuted, and removed from our society. I mean, as I said, as a father, I would execute these perpetrators with a spoon, but, you know, I know in my heart of hearts that the death sentence is uncivilized and wrong, but the rage comes. And for our law enforcers, especially for our law enforcers, to be scared off from doing your job to protect our children because the woke race card is used is a dereliction of duty, and heads must roll for this. And let's pursue Epstein and the royal family while we're at it. Lord Mountbatten, it's well documented what this horror, this monster was, an evil, sick paedophile. The world is better without him and his ilk. Predators, predominantly male, need removed from our societies for the protection of our society, especially children and women. And there is a cultural issue here to deal with it. Face it, talk about it, deal with it. Get politicians to stand up for what is right and not back down from difficult conversations because it's politically perhaps a little incorrect. To hell with that.
They all bow to the whip. We know that, and that's why we in this programme believe in independence for independence, because the party whip's one of the biggest problems in British politics, and it's something that we have to get round. But the clock's kicking on. I want to get a couple of things in if I can. Just two things here immediately to get back to comedians, chancellors, and con men. Mr. Swinny has had two belters this week, Eva. Let me just do the first one here, then I'll come put another one up. He said you must pass the Scottish budget to thwart populist Elon Musk. He talks more British shit every day, John Swinny. This is what the Brits are saying, so I'll say it. That was his first one. But here's the other one, Eva. I love this one. The headline it's in the magazine for the SNP. I plan to finish the job in India. I think you've done it already, John. At least he's told the truth in that one. He is finishing off India. The longer he stays in the job, is he not?
It certainly feels like it if the interview that he gave with Kate Forbes earlier in the week is anything to go by, because neither of them was able to set out a plan as to how we could achieve independence. They had no route map. They both spoke about the need to increase support for the SNP, but that was just about it. They gave no information whatsoever in relation to how you get from voting SNP to Scotland becoming an independent country, other than to hint that perhaps there was a secret plan. We've had enough of that to last a lifetime. His budget speech, though, what he said was, sadly, 2025 will see many of the challenges face the world that it did in 2024. War in Europe and the Middle East, the accelerating threat of climate change, the rise of populism, and global institutions challenged in a way none of us could have anticipated even a decade ago. Now, I've read the abbreviated version of his speech a couple of times. Nowhere was there independence status as a priority. He did say in that speech that eradicating child poverty was his overriding priority. Later on in the week, independence had suddenly become an urgent priority. I would like John Swinny to explain exactly what his number one priority is, because in the absence of Scottish independence, nothing else can be properly addressed or delivered to the satisfaction of the needs of the Scottish people. That is abundantly clear. And what he needs to learn, and he probably knows this already, is that A, Scotland is not going to be independent, and B, Scotland is not going to flourish if all that we're told to do time after time is to vote SNP. But Scotland will become independent and Scotland will flourish if we have a united approach towards attaining independence, and we have a vision and a goal and a plan that works. And it's back to the same old that we've said so many times before. Scotland United, a supermajority of MSPs elected, one per constituency and a presence on the list, whereby the popular vote is with the independence movement, and a majority and a supermajority of elected representatives favour independence, and that's the strapline: independence, nothing less. He could have said that that was an ambition in his budget speech. He could have said that that was his ambition in his plan in his recent interview, and it's high time that he did so. If he doesn't do that, he's going to find himself overtaken by other forces which are currently marshalling behind the scenes across the country.
We are indeed. Lloyd, when you saw that, it's almost like a British politician attacking Musk and talking about the far right, and then saying he's going to finish off Indy. I think he has, but he's done his best to try and finish off Indy.
Yeah, him and Angus Robertson and the wonderful Kate Forbes are putting the final nails in the coffin as we speak. Shock horror. I saw a headline for a podcast. Podcast said, SNP will explain their independence strategy. So there was me, got the popcorn in, a couple of beers, sat down. Still waiting for an answer on that one, though. It's shocking to me. It's utterly shocking that I could spend nearly 40 minutes listening to the Deputy First Minister and the First Minister avoid any discussion of independence, when in actual fact all they were being asked was, what is your plan? What is your plan for independence? They failed to come up with anything other than this astonishing idea by Kate Forbes, you know, that Oxbridge graduate that suddenly appeared from nowhere and is the future saviour of the nation. We have to instill hope. Got that? Everybody got that? Everybody get out there, get yourself some hope, instill it. Independence will come over the hill as if by fucking magic. It's appalling. It's just appalling. We've had a week of John making nonsense statements about things that that have nothing to do with him. Whatever Elon Musk has got to say about this, that, or the other, and you know, let's not forget Ash Reagan and her chats about Elon Musk. Nothing to do with us. When we're an independent country, you can have the luxury of talking about international affairs and internationally powerful rich men. But if you haven't addressed the simple problem of 1 in 4 of our children living in poverty, 1 in 5 of our pensioners living in poverty, having the worst pension in the whole of Europe, national insurance increases that are going to in a very great likelihood, will close a number of hospices in this country, then I'm sorry, your priorities are way, way wrong. Way wrong. More importantly than that, if as the leader of the Scottish National Party, the premier means by which the independence of our country will be delivered, and you don't understand that until we are independent, you can't address any of these issues, any of them. You can tinker around the edges, you can play management games. This is what we end up with. We end up with Kate Forbes and John and Swinny because we have a management structure. We don't have a parliament. It's a managerial structure, a subdivision of the British structure. That's why we end up with second-rate people. Because why would first-rate people want to go and do a manager's job when they could do a ruler's job? Because that's the difference. If we're an independent country, you rule the country, and you rule it on behalf of the people. If you're a devolved administration, you manage it, not on behalf of the people, you manage on behalf of the colonial power. That's the reality. Right. Of it. You beg for more. Now, if John Swinny has got any idea that he is finalising the route to independence, could he please, next time he sits down with the people from Holyrood Sources, actually answer their question and tell us the plan, John? Because this, what's going on at the moment, is absolutely the wrong thing for your party, for the movement, for the country, for the people. Because all you're doing, John, is protecting yourself. And the biggest and the worst thing I heard in the past 10 days is suddenly our First Minister refers to himself in the third person. Twice in speeches. John Swinny would say this. You are John Swinny. Look in the mirror, you idiot. You don't have to talk about yourself in the third person. But I remember the last Scottish politician who started talking about himself in the third person. No longer a member of the Parliament. His party a rump, a total and complete rump. And that was Tommy Sheridan. Tommy Sheridan regularly spoke about himself in the third person. And I'm sorry, when politicians talk about themselves in the third person, that's the day they should be taken away, preferably in a wraparound suit.
I believe Mrs. Thatcher was very good about that as well. But the other one, I mean, he obviously doesn't think before he speaks, Alan, because he also said this week, and I don't have the clip for it, where he said, we need some indie triggers like Northern Ireland. Well, the type of triggers, I thought, you don't know the type of triggers they were using in Northern Ireland, John, you clown. I mean, the man is just, he's just not fit for purpose, Alan.
He's not, but I've got to say, he's not ended the indie movement. He's ended the SNP. Because the indie movement and the Yes movement are still up there, over 50%, and we will continue to rise. Because, guess what, Kate? Because you took away people's hope, we're here giving it back to them. We will give the people the hope and the way forward to independence. And Swinny should be ignoring Elon Musk. It's got nothing to do with Elon Musk. Let the activists take him on Twitter. I mean, I love taking the mickey out. But let the politicians get on with their job and make a competent government to again help bring back hope and show people that we are able to run a country of our own. And what they should be doing at this budget is not just having a budget for devolution. They should be producing two budgets, saying here's what we can deliver with the limited powers we have, but here's an independent budget that could be better for us. That's the way we should be going forward. And the issue about the way they're going to get this through. Now, you've got Patrick Harvey taking medical leave, so he'll not be able to vote against it. Surprise, surprise. And then you've got the Labour Party getting off the hook. They're going to abstain. Why are they going to abstain? Because they don't want to vote down the SNP government. For one reason, they would have to put up an alternative budget and let the people know exactly what they've got in mind. Swinny should be demanding they set their own budget and put it up against the SNP budget. Let the people know exactly what their plans are for our country, because Labour are hiding that, and that's why they're abstaining.
They're also abstaining that, in my opinion, Alan, is because the polls are telling them that they're going to take a tanking at the next election at Holyrood, because Keir Starmer, which brings me nicely on, Phil, to our John. He just keeps putting his foot in it and doesn't move us forward.
Yeah, you're no surprise. He's done that for rather a long time now. In fact, as far as I can remember, and that's the problem. It's
But the other thing, sorry, I meant to say to you, Phil, the thing about is he's talking about Elon Musk. Now, surely as a leader of the independence movement, he should be keeping quiet, because Elon Musk is attacking the British state. He's weakening the British state, and instead of going to the defence of the British state, he should be shutting his mouth and letting Elon Musk stick the boot in. Or am I wrong?
No, we've come across this before, and it was something Napoleon talked of. Never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. But SNP leadership have continued to do this. They can't help but want to see themselves on the telly or hear their own voice. So, I mean, Swinny, you must pass the budget to thwart Elon Musk. I mean, really? He's desperate. He lacks the majority to pass the legislation, including this budget. He's screwed, and so the SNP. Eva's list, she read out, cites the nonsense Swinny spouts, and instead, John and the current leadership of the SNP is now the ever-dutiful little devolutionists, for the reward of what? The continuation of a snout in the trough. That's pretty much it. That's what they're getting. That's what they're there for. And then he goes on, was it a plan to finish the job of Indy? Yeah, you're right, Roddy, he has done that. He and the cabal that he belongs to, since Nicola was handed the keys of an independent Scotland and sold them, they have delivered for the Union and will continue to do so while they remain in power. They've sold out the people of Scotland. They purport to represent and they supposedly would lead us to independence. Not holding on my breath on that for these shysters. And Musk is talking about 100 million to reform, but he's interfering, trying to disrupt Farage. Yeah, right. Let them continue to do that. What the only good thing I see about this, Tommy Robinson's one of the good guys. Is that right? Aye, magic. Andrew Tate, lovely. In one sense, I like what I see here. I like that the truth about how politics really works is there for all to see. Lobbyists control the politicians on behalf of the corporations and leaders that really run what's going on. Trump and the US dollar was 100 million from Miriam Adelson to support whatever Israel supports. And so the world should be able to clearly see that politicians are bought at every level. It's ever been thus. Whether it's an envelope in the council for the planning committee or the licensing committee, we should be all over these shysters everywhere, ruthlessly wielding the knife. And it's ever been thus. And they were bought and sold for English gold, and it continues to this day. It has ever been thus, and it is why Scotland is not free today. But it will be. It will be when we're rid of these shysters.
We will. And just to do it, because the clock's beating us, but I want to put up, ladies and gentlemen, for your amusement, just on following on what Phil said, how these lobbyists, whatever the level are, run the place. On the beginning of the week, the old Elon Musk boy, again, was going to give 80 million quid to Nigel's Reform Party. A day later, he changed his mind a wee bit and said, he wanted Nigel removed and wanted a new leader. And by the end of the week, he decided to back a new horse completely, which was he wanted to get sex trafficker Andrew Tate must be the next new UK Prime Minister. That's the kind of people that are involved in the UK, folks. We've got to get away from them. We've got to get away from them completely. But the last topic I want us all to have a wee chat about, there's two things actually, was the first one, to be an independent country, you can do so many things, Eva. And one of them here is our dear friends again across the water in Ireland. This week, it's been announced here that they have joined South Africa at The Hague in the ICJ case against Israel, which made me slightly envious. I wish that we were an independent Scotland and we could do the same. And I'm so proud of them. But at the same time, in the same week, this also happened. The USS voted to advance it to sanction the ICC over daring to put out arrest warrants for the war criminal that is Netanyahu and Gallant. Our world, on one hand, is great when you're independent and you can do something, and two, the Americans just ignoring law. As I said, it's comedians, chancellors, and conmen.
As we've often said, we could do well by following the example of the Irish. Ireland is not Scotland. Scotland will never be Ireland. The history is different in many respects. But here's a quotation for you from Michael Collins. This is after the negotiation of the treaty that was so controversial that it divided Ireland in two. But there's a lesson here for Scotland, because what Michael Collins said about that treaty was, in my opinion, it gives us freedom, not the ultimate freedom that all nations desire, but the freedom to achieve it. And that is what devolution should have done and can still do for Scotland, provided that we are run by a competent government that the people can have confidence in, and we're led by people within an independence movement who've got gumption, drive, determination, vision, courage and ability, and who can see that one day somehow we will have a united movement so that we can stand beside brothers and sisters in Ireland and all the free democratic nations across the entire world and condemn genocide and condemn war and be a peace-loving, peaceable nation, democratically governed and looking forward to a brighter tomorrow.
Indeed. Lloyd, well done, Ireland. Bad America. Bought and sold.
Yeah, I think, again, I have to, just to finish this programme off, if anyone does go and look at the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister telling us what the route to independence is, they'll be quite astonished that in the middle of urging us to develop more hope, Kate Forbes decides just to say, and look at Ireland. Ireland is so nimble, and Ireland can do this, and Ireland has a surplus. And at no point does she say, but the difference there is Ireland controls its own economy and is an independent country and Scotland is not. But seems to just say this. And do you know what it sounded like to me? It sounded like all those people in the BBC who for years and years and years could never really tell the difference between Ireland and Ireland, Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland. And it was just like that. It was like listening to somebody British talking about a colony. But, hey, America ain't going to save us. Britain ain't going to save us. And as Phil has said, it's us. It's the people of Scotland will save themselves. But unfortunately, we're going to have to do an awful lot of waking up over the next year or so and recognise that those that would purport to lead us are in actual fact leading us down a blind alley.
Yep, absolutely. The clock has really, really beaten us. I'm just going to leave this, folks, because there's been one more joke they've had on us this week, and that's this. You talk about sexual predators and what do we do about them and what's to happen? Well, it seems what you do, you give people like Patrick Grady a cracking job for being a predator. That's what they do. Not in my independent Scotland. Never happened. But that's where we are. Folks, we've overrun. We've gone on too long. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as we have to get back into the groove. And until we see you all again, may you and yours please take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.